So tell me about your writing process.
My writing process?
Yes.
What do you want to know?
So are you a plotter or are you a pantser, as they say?
I used to be a pantser all the way. With my previous books before To Squeeze a Prairie Dog, I knew point A and point B. Typically had a title for the book. I knew how I was going to tell the story, what type of narrator, and then I would just sit down and just pants it out, like you said. But for to Squeeze a Prairie Dog, I really wanted a tightly written story. I had some goals in mind. I wanted to have a positive ending, and I didn't want to risk going in a sour direction. I wanted to get to that positive ending. And so I spent a month before writing doing an outline, something I'd never done before. I wrote backstories for all my characters by hand. I sat down and said, what is Conchino like? What does he do? What does he like to eat? What does he do when he hangs out? What is Rita like? What is her family like? And I had 1 to 2 pages of just pencil written, just little backstory things that a lot of it didn't even make it into the story, but it helped me think of what motivated them. And then, like we were talking about before, I didn't have to struggle when I sat down at the desk, because when it was my time to write, I'd bring up that outline and say, okay, I'm writing about Conchino, he's going on a car race tonight, street race. Bam, I just get going. And so I didn't have some of the struggles that I had earlier, where I wouldn't say it was writer's block, it was just more of, want it to be strong, you know, and then some days it just wouldn't be there, and I would skip, and I didn't have it with this book. So I've carried that into the book that I'm writing now, where I sat down for a month, let me write an outline, let me write down, what are these characters like? What are these boys who are in middle school? What did they snack on? What music did they like? What's their favorite video game? What's their favorite character from Star Wars? What's their favorite comic book character? And kind of just fleshed all that out from the start. And I just felt more prepared going into it.
That's amazing.
And so it was a process that has now become a lot more enjoyable from that aspect. And I can also belt out a lot of words. I could sit down and write 1,800 words in an hour, because
oh my gosh,
I know what
dream.
I know what I'm doing. Where before I would have some sessions like that, and then there were a lot of 250 word sessions, you know, because I just didn't know where I was going. But
how did you get confident in your outline? Because I feel like I always second guess it until I get into the writing and the characters kind of pop up.
I just kind of looked at it from a high level of, does this make sense as it's moving along? And if I got to a point where it's like, well, this wouldn't happen. The characters wouldn't move to this position in this way. So once I had a lot of good points to move along, then I felt pretty confident with it. So with To Squeeze a Prairie Dog, there were some chapters that I moved around, but all the chapters that I had outlined stayed in the book.
Oh wow, that's impressive.
So that was nice. But like I was saying before, sometimes I thought, well, maybe this is happening too soon. Maybe I should let it happen later. Whereas with the book I'm writing now, there was a surprise when I got to the end, as I was saying before, of this is wrapping up too neatly. I need to bring something in to offer some reflection in a more natural way.
So do you feel like, to go back to your question, is it more plot, are you more of a plot writer or are you more of a voice writer? Not that they're
I will strongly say now that I am both. Because when I came into writing, well, I actually didn't study writing in college. I studied English, I studied literature, and so I tore books apart. And when I got out of college, I wanted to be a writer. And I fell in love with Kurt Vonnegut, Charles Bukowski. Some of these guys, and gals, there's some gals too, that when you read 2 or 3 sentences, you're like, I know who this is. And I really admired that strong voice, and I wanted that in my writing too. I wanted people to read it and go, oh, this is Scott Semegran.
Yeah, Bukowski especially. When I first read Bukowski, I was a freshman in college from a very sheltered East Texas background. And I couldn't believe it was even out there. You know, that there wasn't some sort of warning label on it. And I just tore through it and loved it so much.
And I really, even more than the content of his stories, was the voice.
Oh, yeah.
He really loved the low life, right? He felt that there was some integrity down there, and you could hear it in his voice.
Yes, he was an ain't nobody, nobody kind of guy.
Exactly. So, but to get back to your question, I really like both. I like strong narrative voice, and I like a well-written story. I like both of them.
Yeah.
So I try to straddle that line.
Yeah.
So I know I hate to
Well, no, I agree.
give both as the answer, but
No, I absolutely, I want to be both, but I just feel like naturally voice is what I care more about.
I think I'd go more with voice then.
Yeah.
I think if the voice wasn't unique, then I wouldn't be happy.
Yeah.
So.
Because every story's already been told, and I feel like if
you
just keep saying the same plot over and over with the same staid voice, then what's the point, you know?
Right. So did you, when you started this book, did you feel locked into mystery category? Did you feel the shackles of that?
No, just the opposite. I had to shackle myself much later because I wanted to write, very serious literary fiction, but then around the time that I started writing the book, I was struggling with plot, but I was also reading a lot of crime fiction as well. So I was like, well, let's throw a dead body in there. There's nothing better to get a story going than that. But then I was also reading some kind of speculative, like magical realism kind of works at the same time that I happened into. And so there was a magical realism element for a while. And
so so name that magical realism influence. Who were some of those writers? Was it like Kundera or?
No, I think at the time I was reading, maybe like Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He's one of my husband's absolute favorites. And I wasn't trying to be him by any means, but I was like, those are really fun elements. And I think it actually would lend itself to East Texas, which just has this lovely, it just has a lovely natural landscape that feels magical to me. So whenever I pitched my book to my agent, and who would be my agent, there was still a little bit of magical realism at the end, and he was like, you got to decide what you're doing here. And he was absolutely right, because I was trying to chameleon my way through.
Juggle too many balls.
Yeah, absolutely. And even this book, it definitely straddles the line between more like thoughtfully paced literary fiction, and it's not a thriller mystery, and I think that can be confusing to some readers, because it was pitched as Breaking Bad meets As I Lay Dying, which I am totally bowled over by those comparisons, but I just kind of wanted to be like, it's not as fast as Breaking Bad, don't get your hopes up.
Right.
But it was all by design, and I'm pleased with how it turned out.
Well, that's why I like the humor element of the book, because that's where I come from, because most of my books are categorized as humorous literary fiction.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the humor.
Yeah, well, and I see why. Because your books are hilarious.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.